You're listening to the Touch 'em Up podcast. I'm your host, Double M, and on today's episode, it's the next installment of the Double Trouble Breakdown. This time featuring the number 12 ranked in the UFC Welterweight Division, 13-2 overall, training out of Fortis MMA with Saif Sayoud. That's Geoff, Handz of Steel, Neal. So without any further ado, let's get this started and step into the ring. All right, guys, how's everybody doing tonight? Like I said, we have the next installment of the Double Trouble Breakdown, this time featuring Geoff, Handz of Steel, Neal. And this is a guy I've had my eye on for a long time. You know, ever since I saw him fight Nico Price at UFC 241, I knew this guy had something to offer to that UFC welterweight division. I think he can definitely be the champ, all in good time. He's got some of the best striking, some of the most technical hands in the welterweight division. His straight left is just money every time he throws it. And the guy, like I said, he's just a machine. He's a workhorse. He's technical. He's one of the most technical guys in MMA. And that's saying a lot, coming from how much technique matters in the UFC nowadays. I mean, and you this is in a division where you have one of the best strikers in the world, one of the best kickboxers, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I mean, you've got some really, really good technical guys. You've got Rafael Dos Anjos, which is a fight I would love to see Geoff Neal take. So like I said, he's 13-2 overall. His last win is a first-round knockout coming over Platinum Mike Perry at UFC 245. He just starched him, and we're going to talk about that. So the fights we're going to be breaking down on this Double Trouble Breakdown for Geoff Neal is going to be his fight against Frank Camacho at UFC 228, his fight against Belal Muhammad, his fight against Nico Price at UFC 241, and then his fight against Platinum Mike Perry at UFC 245 this past December. So, and really quick before we get into it, I'd like to talk about this whole UFC 249 debacle and everything that's going on with the card currently. You know, it was planned to be Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Finally was going to take place the fifth time the fight has been booked. It was all said and done. Dana White said, no matter what happens, we're going to get this fight to go down. Khabib ended up traveling over to Russia to stay with his family. And he is now stranded in Russia and cannot travel, which means the fight against Tony Ferguson cannot take place. Unbelievable that this fight is not taking place. I mean, obviously with the coronavirus and everything that's going on right now, it makes sense why it wouldn't be taking place, because of everything that's going on and, people's health and everything. But health is number one priority. But this is just, man, I don't know if we're ever going to see this fight. I'd love to keep optimism, and I'd love to see it. It's one of the best fights you could possibly make. And honestly, I have an entire analysis on the Khabib and Tony fight. If you guys would like to hear it, I can definitely record that episode and put that out for you. But I figured I'd hold it off since we're not getting that fight on April 18th. I know that Tony Ferguson has been offered a fight against Justin Gaethje to main event UFC 249. We haven't heard if he accepted the fight or not. I'm not sure. We don't know and everything. Things are changing by the day with travel bans and borders being locked. So who knows if Ferguson and Gaethje would happen. I know Dustin Poirier has offered to throw his name into the hat and take on Tony Ferguson. Both those fights are fantastic. If I had to pick a fight I'd rather see, it's really hard. I mean, Gaethje versus Ferguson and Poirier versus Ferguson are two of the best fights you could make in that lightweight division. I mean, those could be main events of any pay-per-view, title or not, and I'd love to see it. If it's based on, who I want to see at this current point, I would honestly pull Tony from the card. I know people are going to hate me for saying that because people want to see that, but you want Ferguson and Khabib to happen. You want it to finally take place. I think you pull Ferguson from the card. You move it to International Fight Week in July. Again, we don't know when the next fight's going to be and what fight's going to take place and anything with this coronavirus. But I would move him, and then I would make your main event Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje. If they're both ready and they both want to take the fight, I mean, have them be the main event, co-main event it with Rose Namajunas here. You know what? I actually have a breakdown of what I would do for UFC 249. So let's pull that out really quick. I've got it on my computer. I just did it a couple days ago. So let's check this out. Hold on. Hold on a second, guys. I just got to find it. Okay, hold on. I know I got it in here somewhere. Yeah, here we go. So what I would do is your main event is Tony Ferguson versus either Gaethje or Poirier. I obviously, like I said, I would pull him from the fight, but I don't think that's going to happen, and you never really know. And then the co-main event, I would do Colby Covington versus Tyron Woodley. I think Woodley versus Covington is a fight the fans have been clamoring to see. Both guys have offered to take the fight. Woodley has jumped out and said he wants to fight. Colby said he wants to fight. So that's what your co-main event would be. Up next, it would be Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik in the heavyweight division. Then following that, it would be Rose Namajunas versus Jessica Andrade. I know that was supposed to be the co-main event of this pay-per-view, but that's obviously probably not going to happen. So you throw that on the second fight of the main card. And then to open up the card, you do the featherweight bout, which is already scheduled, which is Kelvin Kattar versus Jeremy Stephens. So your UFC 249 card would look like this. First fight of the night, Kelvin Kattar versus Jeremy Stephens in the featherweight division. Up next in the strawweight division, both former strawweight champions, Rose Namajunas and Jessica Andrade, the rematch. Then in the heavyweight division, Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Then the co-main event, Colby Covington versus Tyron Woodley. And then in your main event, Tony Ferguson versus Gaethje or Poirier. Either one. If not, take Ferguson out and do Gaethje versus Poirier. I think that's a fantastic card, and it would hold the fans over until this coronavirus thing kind of works itself out. So that's what I would do. But needless to say, let's get back to the Geoff Handz of Steel Neal technical breakdown. Like I said, that's what we're going to be doing on this episode. So I'd like to start it off. And we're going to start off with Geoff Neal versus Frank Camacho. So one thing I want you guys to keep in mind is Geoff Neal is a southpaw. Now, for people who don't know, who don't follow the technical side of mixed martial arts or striking in general, if you are an orthodox fighter or a conventional fighter, they are the same thing. Orthodox and conventional are the same thing. If you hear me say orthodox or conventional and you think it's something different, it's not. It's the same thing. It's when your lead foot is your left foot and your rear foot is your right foot and your power is in your right hand. So you're standing in front, left foot in front, right foot in back. Your power is coming from the right hand. When you're a southpaw, it's opposite. So your right foot is in front, your left foot is in back, and your power is going to be in the left hand. And the southpaw fighter always opens up the kick to the liver when they deliver a kick to the body. So that's one thing I'd love to cover for you guys on this. And that's just one thing I wanted to start it off with. So his first fight against Frank Camacho, like I said, is at UFC 228. And to start off the fight, right at the beginning of the round, Neal's light on the feet. He's just in and out movement, and he's faking and feigning with his hands high. One thing you'll never see Geoff Neal do is drop his hands. His hands are always up, covering in a high guard, and he's always in and out, faking and feigning. He's hopping in, hopping out, hopping in, hopping out, light on the feet, and he's circling. One of the best things he does is you will always see Geoff Neal circle towards the weak side of the opponent. 9 out of 10 times he's fighting an orthodox fighter, so the power is going to be in the right hand. The weak side would be on the left. So Geoff Neal's in the southpaw stance, and he's always circling towards that left side of the opponent, just to avoid the power in the right hand and always stay out of danger of the big power shot. He always does this. He's always defensively minded, and that's just one thing we got to get out of the way right away. Right away in the fight against Frank Camacho, he uses that lead right hand to frame and manage the distance between himself and the opponent. If the opponent does try to close in and cover the distance or like close the distance on him, he'll put his hands up in front of his head in a traditional high guard, or he'll use that lead right hand to push off on the shoulder of the opponent, and then that way he's maintaining the distance. He's keeping the opponent at arm's reach. He has enough distance to fire his own power shot, and he's also able to deflect the lead punches, the lead hook or the lead jab or the lead overhand of the opponent by putting that hand on the shoulder and turning it and turning with it, so the punch is going to be deflected by the arm. Right away in the fight, he fires off a clean 1-2 on Frank Camacho. So he's moving around. Like I said, he uses that lead right hand to frame and avoid the lead punches, the lead hooks or the lead jabs of the opponent. 1-2. He fires off that 1-2 and it lands clean on Frank Camacho. Neal, as he goes backwards, like I said, he was always circling towards the weak side of Camacho, which would be the left hand, the left side. You never want to circle into the power, because then if the power hand hits you or the power kick, it's extra power and extra force because you're moving into the power of the opponent. Neal is very aware of this, like I said, and he's circling away from it right away against Camacho. He uses that lead right hand, like I said, to frame and maintain correct distance so that he can fire off his shots. Neal saw Camacho dip to his right with a slip to try to avoid or to try to close the distance. So he would slip to his right and use that to try to close the distance and getting close to Geoff Neal so he couldn't strike at distance. So he uses the jab fake to set up the left high kick. It glances off the head of Frank Camacho. Then Camacho tries to close in and pressure on Geoff Neal. So, he was moving around. He saw that Frank Camacho was going to try to dip to avoid the power of the opponent. Obviously, you want to dip in to close the distance and then probably go in for a takedown. So he was looking at Frank Camacho. He saw him dip to the one side. He dipped to his right with a slip, dip, and try to close the distance. So he uses the fake jab to then set up the left high kick. And Frank Camacho gets his hands up, but it glances off because he timed the slip of Frank Camacho and met it with a high kick. This will play a big factor in this fight as we get, more in depth into the breakdown. But he slipped to the side, boom, slip, Neal's the southpaw, left kick, boom, right to the head. Neal guards up with the left hand for defense and then uses the left frame to control the shoulder of Frank Camacho and avoid a wide left hook. So as he closes the distance after that, high kick and tries to pressure Neal against the fence, Neal guards up with the left hand for defense, and then he uses that right hand to control the shoulder of Frank Camacho and avoid the lead left hook. So Camacho was trying to move in, slip, and then throw that lead hook, but since Neal knew he was probably going to try to come in with punches, he framed off with that lead right hand to maintain the distance. And then as Camacho tried to throw that left hook, he was blocking it with the lead right hand. Like I said, we already covered this in the breakdown so far, but it's very important, and it's one of the best things of Neal's game. The frames, the footwork, and the kicks are some of the best things that Geoff Neal does. Neal switches back to orthodox as he backs up to maintain balance and also to maintain power from both sides. A lot of people wonder why do fighters switch stances? What's the point? Why, if you're a right-handed fighter, why would you switch where your left hand's the power when it's your weaker hand? Some guys have power in both hands. Like they have just as hard of a right hand as they do a left hand. So as Neal moves back, obviously, he's in a southpaw stance, so the left foot's in back. So as he backs up, he briefly quick sets into orthodox. So now the power's in the right hand. And this is usually just to trick up the opponent, and then he'll go right back to southpaw. So sometimes the opponent will come forward, he'll step back into orthodox, maybe fire that straight right hand, and then immediately go back to southpaw and get back on his bicycle and circle and move around. Okay, so like I said, where we left off was Neal, like I said, he'll switch back to orthodox as he backs up to maintain the power, and then he'll switch back to southpaw and fire that straight left. So he's moving around, you're trying to close the distance, you're trying to push him back. He'll step back into orthodox and pop, fire that right hand, and then maybe he'll go back to southpaw and fire that power left. But 9 out of 10 times with Neal, I know I'm kind of contradicting myself because I just said something different. But he'll be in a southpaw stance. The opponent will try to close in. He'll step into orthodox, so you think the power is going to come from the right hand. Okay, he switched stances. He's probably going to throw the power right. But then he'll quick set back into southpaw, and then he'll fire the left hand. So it's just, getting you to giving you different looks and trying to, read your defensive patterns and read your slips and read your movement. Up next, Neal circles with the lead right hook to the weak side of Frank Camacho, and then he throws it again and hides the left high kick behind it. So as Camacho tries to move in, he throws that check right hook, and then he throws the check right hook into the left high kick. perfect, picture-perfect kickboxing technique here from Geoff Neal. And if you guys don't know what a check hook is, if you've ever watched somebody like Dominic Cruz, or you've ever watched TJ Dillashaw, or you've ever watched Floyd Mayweather, when an opponent tries to close the distance, if you want to get the outside angle on the opponent as they're moving forward and cut off to the side, the opponent will come in, you'll throw that left hook, and you'll pivot on your lead foot out towards that left side, and then the opponent's going to come forward, and you're going to be off to the side, and you could set up your power shots. So the opponent comes forward, boom, check left hook, you're on the angle, pop, throw the right hand or the left hand, depending on what stance you're in. And this was just perfect technique. He throws that right hook to get off on an angle from Frank Camacho, and then he throws it again, but he hides the left high kick behind it, and he lands the kick on Frank Camacho. Neal's never going to throw an empty kick. I think I said this early on in the breakdown, but later on, Neal's never going to throw a kick without setting it up first. He's never going to throw a punch without setting it up and reading your defensive patterns. Everything he throws has a meaning behind it, and that's coming up out of a camp like Fortis MMA. He's got guys like Uriah Hall that he trains with, and Saif Sayoud. I mean, a phenomenal coach, and you could see it just in how technical Geoff Neal's striking is all the way around. So after this, he angles off to his right, so he's moving around. He takes a brief step off to his right, and then he frames off to exit as Geoff Neal as Frank Camacho tries to push him against the fence. So like I said, people love to try to close distance on Geoff Neal and get him against the fence because it's crowding your shots. It's making you have to throw shots at a closer distance from when you really want to throw them. And crowding a good striker is one of the best ways to beat them. But Geoff Neal knows he doesn't want to be back against the fence. He does not want to get pushed up against the fence because that's where problems can be had. So he angles to his right briefly and frames off to exit as Frank Camacho tries to push him against the fence. So Frank's coming in. He angles off briefly to his right, uses that lead right hand to frame off on the shoulder and get out of danger and get back to the center. And then Frank Camacho tries to push him up back against the fence again, and he counters him with that straight left hand. Just bop! As he comes in, bop! And Geoff Neal's straight left hand is one of the best straight lefts in mixed martial arts. I think the second best straight left besides him is Conor McGregor. Behind that is Darren Till. I mean, he's up there in terms of technical striking. There's no fat in his punches. A lot of people will wind up a shot and then throw it. Geoff Neal, everything is right from the hip. He's got power, but the reason his shots are so powerful is because he doesn't wind up on any shot. Instead of going, it's just pop, 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 and his straight left always lands, and it's money for him against every opponent. He then goes 2-3, so he goes cross, lead hook, right jab on the outside angle to fire off the straight left. So he goes cross, hook, jab to get that outside foot dominance, to get that angle on the opponent, and then boom, fires that straight left hand. Always gets and looks for angles. Geoff Neal is always looking to get on the outside of the opponent's lead foot. This works when you're southpaw versus orthodox. If you're an orthodox fighter, you want to get on the outside foot of the opponent. If you're a southpaw, you want to get your foot to the outside of the lead foot of the opponent, because getting your foot to the outside of the lead foot of your opponent gives you a lane to fire the power shot, and it gets your head off the center line. This is what Geoff Neal's always looking for, and he does it without a doubt, some of the best in the sport. So cross hook, right jab to get that outside angle. Now he's outside the lead foot of Frank Camacho. He's got the lane to land the straight left. Boom, he fires that straight left, catches Frank Camacho right on the jaw. Neal fakes the left straight to see if Camacho's defense is to slip, cover, roll, and just see what he does. So he slips. So he throws that. He fakes the straight left hand, doesn't throw it. Sorry, guys, I got tongue-tied. Fakes it. He sees Camacho slip out to the outside of the jab, or to the outside of the straight left. So now he knows if he throws that straight left and the opponent slips to the outside, it sets up a power high kick on that same side, because the opponent is moving their head towards that, thinking that the attack would come from the lead hand, the opposite side. So he's just making the reads here. And this will definitely play a factor in the fight later on. So Neal then fires the straight left into the left high kick. So let's go over the whole sequence really quick. So he fakes the straight left hand, sees Camacho slips to the outside of that straight left. Then he fakes the straight left and throws the left high kick. Camacho partially gets his hands up, but it's hitting him. He's already landed this high kick, 2, 3, 4 times in the fight already. So he knows it's working. He knows that Camacho's defense isn't there when it comes to the left high kick, and he knows that he can set it up later on. Right after that kick, Neal lands 2 straight left hands, just moves in, bop, bop, and then, it's working fantastically for Neal in this entire fight. Neal then fakes the right hook and then went straight left hand right hook. I mean, it's just picture perfect striking here. All the best strikers are the best at faking and feigning. You make the opponent think you're going to do something, then you do something else, but it could be to set up what you were previously going to do. So he goes, like I said, he lands the 2 straight left hands, bop, bop. Then he fakes the right hook and then goes straight left, right hook. So he fakes it, gets the outside angle, right hand, left straight, right hook, boom. He's setting it up, and he's got Frank Camacho, down to a T at this point. Constantly circling towards the weak side, which is the lead left side of the opponent. You never want to circle into the power because it allows the shots to have a greater effect on you than they would if you were to circle out towards the other way. Obviously, if you circle towards the weak side, the opponent can cut you off by either throwing a lead jab or throwing a check left hook to direct you back towards the power side and then throw a punch, a knee, a kick, anything like that. But by circling towards the weak side, it gives the opponent more time, or it takes the opponent more time to set up the power shots. Camacho tried to shoot a takedown on Geoff Neal, but Neal got the right underhook and then angles to his left off the cage. So Frank Camacho goes in for a takedown. Neal gets that left underhook, or the right underhook, which is his lead side because he's a southpaw. So he gets that underhook, lifts it up, and circles off the fence and goes back to the center. He never wants to be against the fence. It's a place Geoff Neal does not want to be. Up next, Camacho throws a sweeping left hook, and Neal just moves slightly out of range. That's another thing about Geoff Neal. Yes, he will move out of direction, because he doesn't want to get hit. He's one guy you rarely ever see get hit clean in the UFC. He's 5-0 in the UFC, undefeated, and you could see it the more you watch the fights. He doesn't move drastically out of range and then have to take 2 steps to come back in. He'll just briefly slip, or he'll briefly move back, or he'll briefly move back and then angle with the lateral movement and then come back in. And that's one thing that makes Geoff Neal as elite as he is. Neal touches the lead left hand of Camacho and then throws a pity pat jab. And then Camacho tries to counter that with a jab of his own. Or wait, hold on. Okay, no, I messed that up. My fault. So he touches the lead left hand of Camacho. When you touch the lead hand of the opponent, it's either going to occupy that hand or it's going to make them throw a shot from that lead hand so you can't get control. But Geoff Neal does this from southpaw to make the opponent throw a shot or to occupy them so he can slip off the center and throw that straight left hand. So he touches the lead left hand to Camacho, throws a pity pat jab. Camacho tries to counter with that lead left hook, and Neal just counters with a straight left hand down the center, and it drops Frank Camacho. So he's there. He's touching the lead left hand, touching it. He throws a jab. Boom. Frank Camacho's like, okay, I'm gonna try to throw a left hook. He tries to slip and throw the left. As he winds up to throw the hook, Geoff Neal just slips off to the side. Bop! Counters with that straight left hand, drops him right at the end of the first round. This fight is going exactly to plan for Geoff Handz of Steel Neal. Now we move into the second round, and this is the round where Neal takes the fight. So right away, like I said, Neal's faking the step in and out of range. He's never too far away, like I just explained. He's stepping in, stepping out, stepping in, stepping out, step back, step in, step out, angle. He's never too far out of range unless he wants to throw a kick. Then he will get off on an angle from a farther distance than a punch just to be able to land that kick to the body or kick to the head. Again, he starts off, he's touching that lead hand. Camacho shoots for a takedown, a single leg. So he tries to time that touch of Geoff Neal, get on the head on the inside, and try to go for a single. Neal frames across the face with the right underhook. And Camacho continues to try to turn Geoff Neal in this position. So he's touching the lead hand. Camacho shoots a takedown, tries to go for a single leg, which would be on the lead leg. Neal frames across the face with the right underhook. So he's got the underhook on the one side, and he's trying to frame across the face to defend the takedown. Camacho knows that he has to turn the corner and spin in order to either continue to pursue a single leg or to transition from a single to a double and take him down. Camacho continues to try to turn Neal and tries for a head on the outside single after it was previously a head on the inside. So he's got the head on the inside. He turns him. He tries to go head on the outside, but Neal just defends it, and he doesn't get it. Neal angles off the fence because Camacho's using these takedown attempts to either get a takedown up against the fence or to shoot a takedown, make Geoff Neal back up, and then he gets him against the fence and he could try to land his shots. So he stuffed this takedown. Neal gets away. Then Camacho comes right back into range to try to close the distance and get him against the fence. But Neal angles off the fence to his left and lands a straight left hand. I mean, and that's another thing. A lot of the time when a guy's going to throw a power straight left or a straight right, they circle off to the opposite side so they can get to that outside and the outside angle a little bit and throw the power. But Geoff Neal, this time, instead of circling towards his right to go right hook straight left, he circled just a little slight step over to his left to get an angle on the opposite side and then fire off that straight left hand on the angle and go back to what he wanted to do. I mean, this guy is just so technically sound and so, well-timed on everything that he does. Up next, Neal pushes forward and lands a straight left hand, pulls to the outside of the left hook of Frank Camacho, which would be his lead hand. So Neal goes straight left, pulls back. Camacho's trying to counter with that lead left hook. And then he goes straight left, right hook, straight left, right lead uppercut, straight left hand, right hook, straight left, right uppercut, then gets out of danger. I mean, this is just a fantastic combination. If Neal does get into a close range, which we'll cover in a little bit in some of his other fights, if he gets you up against the fence and he's in close, he loves to go straight left hand, lean over to his right, and then throw that right lead uppercut, which is going to lift your head up, and then he's able to fire the straight left hand again. This is a combination that Conor McGregor uses from a far range. McGregor doesn't like to strike close range, but he likes to use that right uppercut to lift the opponent's head up, and then it opens up the lane for the left hand to fire. And this is what Geoff Neal does here. He, like I said, he pushes forward, lands a straight left hand, slips to the outside of the lead left hook that Camacho tries to throw, right uppercut. Okay, no. So he goes left straight, slip to the outside of the left hook, straight left, right hook, straight left, dip. So you have the lane for the lead uppercut is open, straight left, boom, right uppercut, straight left, right lead uppercut, straight left, right hook, straight left, right uppercut. It's constant fundamentals, but it's perfect stuff, and he's never going to let you off the hook. No matter where you try to slip, he's always got something for you. He pushes Frank Camacho back again, touches the lead hand, and then follows the straight left. He's going to touch that lead hand to make sure he's at the correct distance, slip off to the side, bop, straight left hand. This was money for Geoff Neal, and I think you could see why as we explain this. Up next, where do we go? He throws the lead. Okay, he touches the lead hand again, to try to control the distance and know where Frank Camacho is at all times. And then we already did that. Okay, we already talked about this, I think. Pushes Frank Camacho, touches the lead hand. Yeah, okay, so we covered that. He touches the lead hand again, and he pops the straight left. Bink, then goes jab, fakes the straight left, 1-2. This is just perfect technique. So he throws the straight left, bam, it lands. He goes jab, fakes the straight left, which Camacho is going to think is coming, and then he goes 1-2. So he makes you think he's going to throw it. Oh, the opponent's not going to throw the straight left. What about now? Pop, pop. Throws it right after he gets you to think that he's going to throw it. He throws it. He just makes you take that little hesitation, and then your defense is off. Ba ba. After he lands that 1-2, he goes right hook, slight step to his left to land that straight left. Right hook, angle to his left, bah, left hand. Mixing it up, perfect stuff, and then back to the center. We're going to finish this up on the next part. We'll wrap up the finish, and then we'll go to his fight with Bilal Muhammad. All right, stay tuned.